During the Trump administration, tens of thousands of public officials were laid off. Around the same time, Elon Musk grabbed headlines by calling out what he called fake work. He even brandished a chainsaw as a symbol of tearing down bureaucracy. Now critics saw this as an abuse of power, but when President Trump didn't step in to stop it, many interpreted that as his way of saying the bureaucratic system really doesn't need urgent reform. So in today's video, we are going to dig into the film The Devil Wears Prada and see how themes like bureaucracy, fake work, and even noise marketing show up in workplace culture. Let's get started. Now that we've set the stage, let's dive into the movie itself. The Devil Wears Prada 2006, directed by David Frankel and based on Lauren Weisberger's best-selling novel, takes us behind the curtain of the high-stakes world of fashion journalism. It's not just a stylish film, it's sharp, witty, and surprisingly thought-provoking. Starring Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, and Emily Blunt, the movie shows us the glamorous but also exhausting reality of the fashion industry, while exploring deeper themes like ambition, power, and self-discovery. The story is inspired by Weisberger's own experience working as an assistant to Vogue's Anna Wintour. We follow Andrea Andy Sachs, who lands a dream job as the assistant to Miranda Priestly, the legendary editor-in-chief of Runway magazine. It's the position that, as the film says, millions of girls would kill for. But of course, the reality isn't so dreamy. Andy faces impossible demands, constant criticism, and brutal working hours. As she gets pulled deeper into the glamorous world of high fashion, she faces a tough choice. Should she embrace the ruthless workaholic culture to succeed, or should she stay true to her own values, even if it means walking away from the opportunity of a lifetime? That's where the film starts to open up bigger conversations about power, ambition, and integrity. Now that we've got the story and themes in place, let's zoom in on one of the movie's sharpest critiques, bureaucracy. In The Devil Wears Prada, bureaucracy isn't about paperwork. It's about hierarchy, status, and rigid rules. The film shows how a system like this creates unnecessary obstacles, slows everything down, and values appearances over actual productivity. First, take a look at the hierarchy. Runway magazine runs on a strict chain of command. Every decision flows down from Miranda Priestly at the very top, through editors, assistants, and finally to Andy at the very bottom. Even tiny choices require Miranda's approval, which makes the whole system painfully slow and inefficient. Second, there are all these arbitrary rules. Employees are expected to wear only high fashion clothing, even if their job has nothing to do with fashion. They must answer Miranda's call instantly, no matter the situation. And they are expected to put Miranda's demands ahead of their personal lives. Remember when Andy missed her boyfriend's birthday because of a last-minute order? These rules don't make work better, they just reinforce authority. And then of course, there's Miranda herself, the ultimate bottleneck. She micromanages everything, no matter how small. Nothing happens without her say-so. The result? A workplace where employees spend more time trying to please Miranda than actually doing meaningful work. In short, The Devil Wears Prada shows us that bureaucracy in Runway is less about efficiency and more about prestige, control, and tradition. Creativity and productivity end up buried under fear, hierarchy, and obsession with maintaining appearances. And if bureaucracy slows everything down with rules and hierarchy, the next big issue in the Devil Wears Prada is what we call pseudo-work, that looks busy but doesn't really matter. Runway magazine is full of these tasks. Andy Sachs, played by Anne Hathaway, is constantly running errands that have almost nothing to do with real journalism. She fetches Miranda's coffee multiple times a day, hunts down an unpublished Harry Potter manuscript, and even tries to track down a lost flight during a hurricane. Something completely out of her control. These jobs create a sense of urgency but add little to no real value. And it's not just Andy. Runway thrives on a culture of performative overwork. Emily, Miranda's first assistant, brags about how little she eats or sleeps, as if suffering proves her dedication. People stay late, not because the work requires it, but because looking busy is part of the culture. Even more telling is the industry itself. It doesn't really value substance. What matters is the image. And this role isn't about writing articles or developing journalism skills. It's about maintaining a persona and carrying out arbitrary requests that keep the illusion of perfection alive. In short, The Devil Wears Prada shows pseudo-work as an endless cycle of meaningless tasks and performative business. It's a critique of toxic work environments that mistake looking busy for actually being valuable. If pretending to be busy distorts value inside a company, let's shift our focus and talk about how the fashion world creates desire itself through something called noise marketing. You see, the fashion industry isn't just about selling clothes, it's about creating buzz, exclusivity, and that irresistible sense of desire around products, trends, and brands. And this movie gives us a fascinating glimpse into exactly how that process works. First, Miranda herself is the ultimate trendsetter. The moment she approves a style, it instantly becomes desirable. Her authority doesn't just reflect fashion, it shapes it. That's the power of noise marketing. When one influential figure amplifies a brand presence, the whole market follows. Second, the film emphasizes scarcity and exclusivity. Invitations to Paris Fashion Week or access to designer outfits are shown as rare privileges. This mirrors how noise marketing works in real life. The harder something is to get, the more people want it. And third, look at Andy's transformation. She goes from ordinary to high fashion, and suddenly people treat her differently. That makeover isn't just about clothes. It shows how branding and association with the elite can completely change public perception. In other words, noise marketing convinces us that if we follow the trend, our status will rise too. So in the end, The Devil Wears Prada illustrates how carefully curated hype, exclusivity, and influencer power come together to drive consumer demand. That's noise marketing at work. But behind all that glamour lies another important conflict: feminism and gender roles. It's not just about fashion or ambition anymore. This time, the story digs into what it means to be a woman in power in a world still shaped by traditional gender expectations. Miranda Priestley is one of the most powerful figures in the fashion industry. But here's the catch. Because she is a woman in a male-dominated world, she is judged far more harshly than her male counterparts would ever be. This reminds us of Simone de Beauvoir's idea in the second sex. that women in positions of power often have to play by rules written by men just to survive at the top. And the film also reflects Judith Butler's theory of gender performativity. Miranda is constantly performing the role of the flawless, controlled leader, but we have to ask at what cost to her humanity. So here's the philosophical question the film raises. Do women have to sacrifice more than men to achieve power? At its core, The Devil Wears Prada isn't just about fashion. It's about choices we make in the pursuit of success, and how those choices shape who we are. It forces us to ask, how much of ourselves are we willing to sacrifice for ambition? Does power always come with a price? And is it really possible for personal success to go hand in hand with an ethical life? So let me turn it back to you. If you were in their shoes, would you take Miranda's path to power, knowing what you would have to sacrifice? Or would you walk away like Andy, in search of balance, even if it meant giving up the opportunity of a lifetime? Now, let's turn to another big theme in The Devil Wears Prada, materialism. This movie makes it clear that fashion isn't just about clothes, it's about power, status, and influence. Miranda Priestley doesn't just wear luxury prints. She defines what's in and what's out, and the entire industry listens. Even the runway office itself screams materialism, from the pristine design to the endless obsession with the latest trend. And then we have Andy's transformation. At first, she is indifferent to fashion, but little by little, she adopts designer clothing to gain credibility in this world. It's a perfect example of how material goods can reshape our identity and even determine whether we belong. But of course, with glamour comes temptation. The Paris trips, the exclusive events, the powerful connections, and it is seduced by this lifestyle. And that's exactly how materialism works. It convinces us to trade our values for a taste of prestige. Film also contrasts superficiality and substance. Through Nigel, we see fashion as both an art form full of creativity and as a shallow system obsessed with appearances. The message is clear. In this world, people are judged more by what they wear and own than by who they really are. And in the end, Andy realized the price. Embracing materialism means sacrificing her relationships and authenticity. That's why she chooses to walk away, a powerful rejection of materialism's hold. So the big question the film leaves us with is this: is material success really worth the sacrifice it demands? It's a question not just for Andy, but for all of us. We've already looked at how materialism shapes Andy and the entire fashion industry. But there's another shadow that materialism casts: narcissism. The Devil Wears Prada narcissism takes center stage. The film vividly portrays extreme self-absorption, a lack of empathy, and an endless hunger for validation, all set against the backdrop of the fashion world. And the person who embodies this the most is Miranda Priestley. She's the quintessential narcissist. She sees herself as the ultimate authority in fashion. Her word shapes the entire industry. She feels entitled to absolute obedience from her staff, no matter how unreasonable the demand. Remember when she expects Andy to magically get an unpublished Harry Potter manuscript? That's entitlement. She also shows little empathy for her employees' personal lives. For Miranda, runway always comes first, and maybe the most manipulative part is she uses fear and subtle mind games to keep people under control. But she is not the only one. Emily, Miranda's first assistant, also shows narcissistic tendencies. She is obsessed with her image, constantly belittles Andy, and even sacrifices her health just for the status of attending Paris Fashion Week. And then there's the industry as a whole. The fashion world is portrayed as an ecosystem of collective narcissism. Image, status, and exclusivity matter more than genuine human connection. Everyone's competing for recognition, power, and validation, feeding this cycle of self-absorption. Even Andy isn't immune. At first, she's disgusted by the vanity at runway, but over time, she starts dressing to impress, prioritizing work over relationships, and even craving Miranda's approval. That moment when Andy realizes she is losing herself, that's a turning point in the film. And then comes Miranda's ultimate narcissistic move, betraying her loyal art director Nigel, just to secure her own power. When Andy reacts in shock, Miranda compares herself to Andy, suggesting Andy also made questionable choices to succeed. Classic narcissistic justification, making others believe it's all just part of the game. Now here's where the film connects to our own lives. Because let's be real, at some point, we may have to deal with a narcissist, whether it's a boss, a colleague, or even a family member. And the most important lesson, separate their toxic behavior from yourself. Don't take it on as your fault. Never share personal details they can use against you. And above all, don't fall into the trap of thinking, if I just change, maybe they'll treat me differently. That mindset only keeps you stuck. So what's the takeaway? In The Devil Wears Prada, narcissism fuels the world of fashion. Miranda thrives in it, Emily succumbs to it, and Andy almost loses herself to it. But ultimately, the film tells us this: true fulfillment doesn't come from chasing superficial approval. It comes from rejecting toxic self-absorption and holding on to your own values. But here's what's really interesting. This narcissistic tendency doesn't just stop at someone's personality. It actually connects to a much bigger issue: abuse of power. In the film, The Devil Wears Prada portrays this theme powerfully through Miranda Priestley in the world of Runway magazine, where she reigns as editor-in-chief. First, we see toxic leadership in action. Miranda rules through fear, unpredictability, and humiliation. Her employees are constantly on edge, second-guessing what she'll demand next. And this doesn't just happen in the movies. In real life, toxic leaders thrive by keeping people insecure, so no one ever dares to challenge them. The result? A culture of silence where mistakes are punished and success go unnoticed. Second, there's exploitation through overwork. Andy is expected to be available 24/7. Even for tasks that blur the line between professional and absurd, like fetching unpublished manuscripts or managing Miranda's personal life. Sound familiar? Many real-world industries, finance, tech, fashion, normalize these extreme hours, treating exhaustion as a badge of honor, even when it destroys personal lives and mental health. Then there is dehumanization in the workplace. To Miranda, employees are disposable tools, stripped of dignity. And again, this mirrors reality. In many corporations, loyalty is rarely rewarded. Downsizing, scapegoating, and sacrificing people for political gain are seen as part of the game. Finally, the film asks, is abuse of power just about individuals like Miranda, or is it systemic? The truth is industries, that reward results over ethics and prestige over well-being actually produce readers like her. And here's the big takeaway. The Devil Wears Prada dramatizes abuse of power with glamour, but what it really shows us is the cycle of intimidation, overwork, and dehumanization that sustains toxic hierarchies. That makes us ask, is abuse the fault of one powerful person, or of the entire system that enables them? And all of this, the abuse of power, the toxic leadership, it doesn't just stay at the top. It trickles down and shapes the entire workplace culture. So what kind of workplace culture does it create? In The Devil Wears Prada, we get a vivid picture of what happens when high-pressure industries run on fear, competition, and sacrifice. First, let's talk about the cutthroat nature of high-stakes jobs. At Runway, only the best survive. Work always comes first, even if that means sacrificing your personal life or your health. Andy learned this the hard way. She realizes that being competent isn't enough. What Miranda really wants is total devotion, assistants who are on call 24/7. And honestly, that sounds a lot like today's finance, tech, or media industries, where overwork isn't just expected. It's treated like a badge of honor. Then there's the hierarchical power structure. Miranda sits at the top, untouchable, while everyone else competes just to stay afloat. Instead of collaborating, employees are pitted against one another, creating a survival of the fittest environment. Andy is constantly reminded that her job is privilege, even when she is treated unfairly. And doesn't that feel familiar? In so many workplaces today, bosses intimidate rather than support, while employees are forced to prove their worth through extreme dedication. And of course, there is the expectation of sacrifice. Andy's friendships, her family relationships, even her romantic life, everything starts falling apart under the weight of her job. Meanwhile, Emily literally sacrifices her health just for the chance to attend Paris Fashion Week. That pressure to give up your relationships, hobbies, even your well-being for the sake of career advancement, yeah, that's not just fiction. Finally, let's look at the fine line between passion and exploitation. Some people excuse the toxic environment by saying, "Oh, this is just a passion-driven industry." But passion can be weaponized. The illusion of exclusivity, like millions of girls would kill for this job, makes people tolerate mistreatment. Even Miranda, who seems untouchable, admits she is constantly at risk of being replaced. Power doesn't make her immune to the system. So here's the big question the film leaves us with. Is it really worth it? Andy eventually walks away, realizing that success at Runway means losing herself. Miranda, on the other hand, stays trapped in that cycle. Proof that power doesn't always equal freedom. Takeaway: the movie isn't just critiquing fashion, it's asking all of us. Is success worth sacrificing your identity and your values? So what about you? Would you push it through and try to thrive in this kind of high-pressure culture? Or would you walk away like Andy did? Now that you've seen how toxic workplace culture shapes the environment at Runway, let's dig a little deeper into one of its biggest consequences, work-life balance. Or maybe it's better to say the lack of it. The Devil Wears Prada work-life balance isn't just a side note, it's one of the central conflicts of the story. Andy's entire journey shows us what happens when a job consumes every waking moment and forces you to weigh ambition against the relationships, identity and personal well-being. First, let's talk about the always-on culture. In the movie, Andy is expected to be available 24/7, running both professional and personal errands for Miranda. And if you think about today's world, it's not so different. With smartphone, emails, and remote work, many of us feel the same pressure to be constantly available. And during the pandemic, those boundaries between home and work became even blurrier. Second, the strain on relationships. Andy's friendships fall apart, and her relationship with Nate crumbles under the pressure of her job. Sound familiar? Studies today show that burnout and long work hours put a heavy strain on family and social life. Many professionals admit that they feel guilty for missing birthdays, vacations, or even just a simple downtime with a loved one. Third, the role of hustle culture and prestige. Andy convinces herself that the sacrifices are worth it because of the prestige attached to the runway. And this mirrors real life. Hustle culture glorifies overwork as a badge of honor. People accept imbalance because they believe the payoff, promotions, money, reputation will be worth it. But as Andy learned, that prestige doesn't always justify the cost. Fourth, burnout and mental health. Andy nearly loses herself, falling into the same destructive patterns we see in Miranda. And today, burnout is recognized as a workplace epidemic. It can lead to exhaustion, anxiety, and even a sense of losing your purpose. Like Andy, many of us are left wondering, is the reward really worth the damage? Finally, choice and boundaries. Andy's ultimate decision is to walk away from runway. By leaving, she chooses her relationships, her authenticity, and her own definition of success. In today's world, we are seeing a similar movement, whether it's setting formal boundaries, choosing flexible schedules, or even switching jobs entirely. Some call it the Great Resignation. Either way, it's about valuing well-being over prestige. So to sum it all up, the film critiques the idea that endless devotion to your career is the only way to succeed. Instead, the Devil Wears Prada frames work-life balance as a moral choice. Do you sacrifice your identity and relationships for material success? Or do you step back and choose a moral, authentic, balanced life? So far, we've seen how Andy struggles to find balance between her work and personal life. But actually, that very choice, the decision to take back control of her life, is what defines her personal growth. In this film, Andy's journey isn't just about building a career. It's really about something deeper, the question, who do I want to become? At first, she's an outsider, plain clothes, no interest in style, focused only on journalism. Her clumsy mistakes show just how out of place she is. But with persistence and Nigel's mentorship, she starts to grow, not just professionally, but in confidence and even in the style. Now, her transformation isn't just about new clothes. It's symbolic. It shows she is learning how to adapt, how to survive in a demanding environment, and how to succeed outside her comfort zone. That's a key part of real growth. But here's the catch. With success comes tough moral choices, and it begins to ignore her friends, put work before her relationships, and even betrays Emily for the chance to go to Paris. Her integrity is tested, and the film shows us the darker side of ambition. The turning point comes in Paris, when she sees Miranda betray Nigel's to protect her own power. In that moment, Angie sees a mirror, a glimpse of what she could become. Successful, yes, but lonely and compromised. That realization forces her to ask, is this really the kind of person I want to be? And that's where her ultimate growth happens. Andy decides to walk away. She chooses authenticity over status, boundaries over burnout, and defines success on her own terms. It's a moment of true maturity, showing us that growth isn't just about moving forward, but also about knowing when to step back. In short, The Devil Wears Prada reminds us that personal growth is a double-edged sword. You can gain skills, confidence, and adaptability, but if you lose yourself in the process, is that really growth? Now that we've explored Andy's personal growth, let's take a step back and look at The Devil Wears Prada as a whole. What are its biggest strengths? What could be been better? And most importantly, what's our final verdict on this film? First, the strengths. The movie is visually stunning. Thanks to Patricia Field's legendary costume design, we get an endless parade of glamorous fashion and New York City at its most stylish. The dialogue is sharp and witty. Miranda's icy one-liners and Emily's sarcasm keep the story both cutting and funny. The pacing is fast, engaging, and leaves no room for filler. And maybe most importantly, the film goes beyond the surface. Miranda isn't just a villain. She is shown as a layered, complex woman navigating a male-dominated industry. That depth is what makes the story so compelling. But of course, not everything is perfect. Here are some of the criticisms. Andy's personal life feels underdeveloped. Her relationship with Nate doesn't hold the same weight as the workplace drama. And yes, the storyline of the naive newcomer transformed by a demanding job is familiar. It's well done but still a bit predictable. The Devil Wears Prada is iconic for a reason. It's stylish, fun and deeper than it looks at first glance. With Meryl Streep's unforgettable performance, razor-sharp writing and stunning visuals, it has earned its place as one of the best workplace drama ever made.